Hey everybody, it's Mrs. King, and today we're going to learn about one of the elements of art called value. Value is really fantastic, and it's one of the most powerful tools that we have. It's what takes something like this, a very flat looking object, and makes it much more round looking, at least in the examples that we're going to show you today. So let's start. So our goal today is to practice a value scale and apply a range of value to a drawing. By the end of this lesson, I hope you can say that I can create a range of value by adjusting pressure when I color or draw. On a piece of paper, I want you to draw a long rectangle with 1, 2, 3, 4 lines in it, splitting the rectangle up evenly into 5 boxes. On the left, I want you to write lightest, and on the right, I want you to write darkest. Value really just means the lightness or the darkness in a color. So I'm going to show you what that means and how to create a range of value that you can apply to your art. If I were to take my pencil and push down as hard as I possibly can in this darkest box, I will get the darkest value that's possible. Oops, there's something underneath my paper, so that's going to give me some texture too. Unplanned. But the key is to fill in all of the white space here, not letting any of the white paper shine through, because that white paper will make the value lighter. All right, so we really want to push down very hard, get the darkest possible value that our pencil can give us, and eliminate all of the white paper. However, if we wanted the lightest possible value, I wouldn't even touch the paper, because the paper itself is white, and that is the lightest it could possibly. Now, in order to have a range in value, something that goes from lightest to darkest and everything in between, we need to transition from this light value to dark. And here's how I would say to do it. Take your pencil, and in this second box, color as lightly as you can, barely touching the paper. Really light. Don't push down very hard. It is harder to make it lighter after it's been made dark. Okay, so you want to make it light the first time, just like that. So you can see that this second value here is darker than the lightest value, but it is much lighter than the darkest value. So now our next box is going to have to be filled with a value that is somewhere between how dark this value is here to the left of it and how dark the darkest value is there. So here's how we'll do it. When I start coloring in here with my pencil, I'm not going to push down any harder in here than I did in this box. I want to have it be about the same at first. I can always make it darker later. Once I have the same value as I do in here, and those are about the same, I'm going to push down just a wee bit harder. Not much, just a little bit, just enough to make it darker than the box right before it. I don't want to make it too dark though, because I can't easily lighten it up. So as you can see, I filled in the rest of this middle box. It is definitely darker than the box before it, and it is definitely lighter than the box at the end. So we might have to modify these or change these a little bit later, but now we've got to get this box filled in with a value that is somewhere between the middle box and the last box. So again, we start the same way, pushing down just as hard as we did in the middle box to start with that same value. And then we'll go back over it, pushing down just a little bit harder, taking our time, because that's very important. Just pushing down a little bit more. We have to be careful. We don't want to make this second to last box too dark, because it always has to remain lighter than the last box. Now we're starting to get a value that is darker than the box before it, yet a little lighter than the box after it. So there we have it. We have a range in value from the lightest value that this pencil can make, which is absolutely nothing, growing darker, darker, until we get to the darkest possible value, not letting any of the paper white come through. We can also do this kind of thing with colored pencils, and I want to show you just a little bit of a different technique. I'm actually going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to start with the darkest value and move to the lightest value. I always use the comparison of an airplane. If If you've ever been on an airplane, you know when it's sitting on the runway, waiting to take off, but not yet moving, it's really heavy. It's usually packed with people and is just sitting there with all of its weight and all of its fuel, pushing down as hard as it can on the runway, all right? But as that airplane gets ready to take off down the runway, it's going to get lighter and lighter as it moves down and eventually takes off into the air. So the pressure on my pencil, I kind of think of that just like I would with an airplane. As I'm moving my airplane or my pencil down the runway, I'm going to start pushing down a little bit less, but I want to make sure that I'm still in control of how much pressure I'm putting onto my pencil. So there are some textures on my paper here, but I'm getting lighter and lighter as I move on down the paper or move across the paper. Lighter and lighter, lighter and lighter, until eventually I take off. Now notice that my pencil kept moving back and forth when I got to the end because I didn't want to stop abruptly. If we do that, we do end up with a line. One of the biggest difficulties, though, that I've found students tend to have with a range and value and transitioning from the darkest values to the lightest is doing it smoothly. So you see how it looks like there's kind of a line here. And if we want that line there, then that's one thing. We still have different values. But if we want it to be a nice smooth transition, which is what really allows our drawings to have a roundness to them, we want to get rid of that line. And let me show you how to do that. When I want to get rid of a line like this, I gently color over it using very light pressure, and I go back and forth with my colored pencil. It does take a little bit of time. You don't want to press too hard, but you want to press down a little bit harder each time you pass through it just to try to blend away that line. You don't want to be in any big hurry because if you're trying to rush through it, it's just going to get frustrating. And if you have something that's underneath your paper like I do, that's also going to frustrate you a little bit. These little dots here are going to bother me, but that's just because that's me. So you see how I've kind of blended away that line. And now it goes ahead and it transitions through to that nice light value. So here's why we're doing this. As I've been getting your artwork in, I've noticed that a lot of students use the same value throughout their artwork. They're always using, or often using the same pressure throughout. I did ask for a couple of volunteers, and I had a few friends that were willing to let me borrow their examples and show what happens when we use a range of value to their artwork. So I redrew a couple of artworks from students with their permission, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you one example for today so our video is not any longer than it needs to be. I'm going to use Bella's example of her peep that she drew, and she did a really, really nice job, but I want to show you what happens when we start applying that range of value to give us that roundness and to see a little bit of shadow in our artwork when this is applied. So let's watch. Here's my version of the peep with just one value throughout, the same pressure through. The first thing I will do is I will take that same colored pencil and I will outline, pushing down harder so I know that we've got an edge there. Usually around the edge of any object, you're going to have a darker value because light can't bend. So the edges of an object are almost always dark. Just for the sake of knowing where the light is coming from, I drew a little light bulb to say that this is where our light source is. It kind of just shows you that light is shining from this direction, so it gives you a better idea of where the light should fall. I drew a few lines to help me figure out where I wanted to add my darker values, and you will see how that works in just a second. Now, of course, you're not going to work this quickly, but watch how carefully and slowly I added darker values, blending, blending, blending to make sure that I don't have any lines where I don't want them. I keep moving around the peep just to make it a little bit darker in some spots. I can always make it darker if I need to, but once it's dark, it's very hard to make it light. I even used a little black just for fun, and I added a little shadow as well, but you don't need to do that if you don't want. Or you can try if you would like. It's kind of... So now you can see the difference in that it's the same drawing, except for now it's got a sense of roundness because I added some darker values in the spots where shadows and less light would be. Have fun and experiment. Okay, so what I'd like for you to do is either take an old drawing that you've done, either one that we did since we've been home, or one that you've done at some other time, and apply what you just learned about value to it. Or try a new drawing, and then make sure you're sharing and showing a range of value in your drawing as you create it. It's something that we have to practice. It doesn't happen overnight. It's something that takes a little bit of time, but once you get it, it gives you a world of power creatively. Value is probably one of my favorite, it is my favorite element of art. So have fun, stay creative. Email me what you create at my little email address right over here. And if you share on social media, I think this is the place you would do it at. So yeah, have fun. See you soon. Stay creative. Bye for now.